From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Project podcast. Welcome, friends, to 295. We're almost at 300 episodes. I can't even believe I've been doing this for that long, and I'm so grateful for, this community, you guys sending me in questions for these Q&As. I'm sure I'll do a Q&A for the 300th episode, just, to celebrate us being together on this channel and in this community. We don't want to settle for the mundane. We want to grow. We want to develop. We don't want to continue down the path we already walked down. If you're walking into kind of like a dead end where you already know what's to come, the predictable end of that road. So today I'm answering your questions. But before I dive into the first one, just note that every Monday I have a meditation on this channel, on this podcast. Meditation Monday. The past one was awesome. It'll help you calm down, to be present in the world of chaos. And let me know what you guys think of the meditations, because these are so powerful. I'm putting together these meditations because I want you guys to get into this habit that, you do a meditation every week. And you know what? I hope that you do the meditation every single day. So when the meditation comes out on Monday, do that meditation throughout the week. Try and make it into a routine, because it'll help you slow the racing thoughts. That's why it's a practice, because at first you can't really get a grip over being present with your thoughts. That's last week's meditation. Being present with your thoughts. And it's difficult, so you have to make it into a practice. And then by the 12th time you do it, you'll recognize that there is a difference in how you're observing them, or you might realize that it's becoming more easier, I guess you can say. But so go check that out right now, wherever you listen to this podcast, besides YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, wherever you'll find those meditations. So let's dive into the first question today. The first one comes from Jordan. I'm 32 years old, and I feel like I wasted my 20s battling anxiety. Yeah, you and me both. I used to feel the same way. Now I feel hopeless because it's still continuing, and I'm scared it'll ruin my 30s. How can I move forward and stop beating myself up over lost years? This is such a great question. It's so important, because a lot of people battling not just anxiety, but depression, they feel like they've wasted so much time, and they beat themselves up for that. And they feel like they're just going to waste much more of their life. This is something I felt when I was awakened to my anxiety. You can't help but feel this way. That's the thing, is you look back and you realize, oh no, I was unconscious. I was in a destructive loop for X amount of years. How am I possibly going to shift this or get that back? The first thing is, you can't, but you can change the meaning of what you went through. Well, first of all, if your mind is stuck in the past, then it cannot be present, period. You're stuck in a fixed mindset. You're stuck in a continual mind loop, right? The Groundhog Day within the mind. You're replaying, you're reliving the same thoughts, feelings, and behaviors continuously. I'm watching The Matrix, and which I've seen before, but I haven't seen it in a while. And so much of that movie, it sticks out to me, because Neo, he is awakened, right? At the beginning of the movie, he has two aliases. He has Neo, which is his online alias, and then his real name, Mr. Anderson. And, he's living this repetitive life. You can tell by the look in his eyes, his posture, his demeanor. And you can tell because of his willingness to step out of his Groundhog Day pattern, because he is presented with an adventure, and he jumps on that adventure so quickly, right? He is introduced to Trinity. He's introduced to a phone call that kind of awakens him to the fact that he's been sleeping for so long. I love the first shot of Neo in the movie. He's sleeping, right? And he is awakened by this calling, this like burning bush, like Moses. The burning bush grabs his attention. It's something glimmering. It's something meaningful to you, and it'll happen in your life. And so it grabs Neo. And what happens is that he jumps to the adventure because the phone call tells him, the voice, right? That's like the phone call. Morpheus is like the literally the conscience, because the conscience is speaking out to him saying, follow the white rabbit, follow the white rabbit. And what that means, well, it's so perfect, right? It's the Alice in Wonderland story of following the white rabbit out of curiosity, the burning bush, the thing that glimmers, you follow it, and it leads you down the rabbit hole, out of your comfort zone, out into the unknown. That's where it's leading you. And that he follows it. He decides to listen to that voice, and he follows that white rabbit. It was on the girl's tattoo, right? The people that came knocking on his door, it glimmered to him on that tattoo, right? He kind of stared at it, and he's like, this is it. He decides. He makes a choice, but also note that we make a choice. If we're not awake enough, we're going to miss out on the things that glimmer to us, right? But now, Neo's awake, and so he follows that. It leads him into this great adventure. And it leads him to Morpheus, right? It leads him to, he encounters malevolence, right? He encounters the agents, right? He encounters Mr. Smith. And then that awakens him even more to kind of the horrifying realities out into the unknown, right? It shocks him, but he decides, well, he was in the car with Trinity, and Trinity says, you can leave. And then Neo opens the door, and right when he's about to step out, Trinity says, you're going to just walk down the same path you've been walking, and you know the end of that path. You know that end. And so he looks out into the alleyway, and then he comes back into the car, and he's like, because he just can't walk down that same path. It's like me in my anxiety recovery. I couldn't walk down that path anymore. I knew that everything that I was doing in my life needed to shift. I just needed to walk down a different path, just go down somewhere fresh. And so the mind wants to stay in comfort, but it also wants the unknown. It wants to take the red pill. The blue pill, like Morpheus says, is the one that's going to lead you back into your old life. The red pill is what's going to lead you into the rabbit hole. And so what it means to be present means to acknowledge your flaws right now, right here and now, what you're not doing in your life, what needs to change. And that anger about wasting time is good. That's a good anger, because it can fuel you. It can fuel you outwards to some sort of change. It's a good thing. Something to move towards, right? You need a vision. You need a vision. You need some sort of goal. If you remain static, then how terrible will it be for you a year from now if you remain static? Then you have to pick one thing that you could change, one thing, a goal that you can move towards. Because if you don't have a goal, if you don't have an aim, if you don't bear your cross and walk up the hill with it, then you're not going to have any meaning in your life. You're not going to have any mini, and you're not going to develop. Your body is built to develop, period. That's it. Pick up any self-help book on the shelf. You're built to develop. We're not meant to be stagnant. We're not that kind of creature. We need a load to carry. We need goals in our lives. We need to go out into the unknown. And imagine if you change 1% every day. In a year from now, that's a 365% change. That's a whole different person. Think about that. 1% change. What could that even mean? Well, it could just mean the 1% change is getting up a half hour earlier and then, working on that time, dialing that time backwards until you end up getting up at 6. Maybe you're earlier than that. Or then that 1% change is getting rid of something that you're eating or drinking every single day that's routine, or getting rid of a certain time of day where you're hanging out with your friends and doing stupid things that you shouldn't be doing, or whatever the habit is. It's just tackling one thing and seeing that you can actually make some sort of change. Now, the question, a big question, is it possible to completely change, to be different in every way? And yes, you know that. If you're a listener of the show, you know that, because that's the Phoenix, the death and rebirth story. That's Christ, the death and rebirth story. That's Harry Potter, the death and rebirth story. And it resonates with us because sometimes we have to acknowledge our faults. And that is a really terrible thing to do for us to deal with, because we have to learn the lesson and then we have to burn away our old self. And it requires humility. Now, I want to read you a passage from John 15, passages 1-2. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vineyard keeper. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, he removes. And he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit. What does that mean? I am the true vine. I am the thing that springs out of nothingness, the seed of truth. And then the vine grows upwards, up towards the heavens. And that vine, Jack and the Beanstalk, the thing that grows from the seed that he gathers, it springs towards the heavens. It's the thing that mediates between earth and the thing above. And what grows from that is fruit. And some vines may not bear fruit. But to be pure and to develop into wholeness, you have to trim the branches that don't bear fruit. And what that means is, well, you know what that means. Some of your vines don't. They're causing you your own destruction. You're behaving in ways that you know to be faulty. What it means to bear fruit is to be nourishing, to be of truth, to be, knowledge. And we have to trim those branches that aren't producing and that isn't helping us maintain a certain way of being in our lives. So for me, going through anxiety recovery, I had to recognize all of these different areas that I knew to be faulty because I had to acknowledge them. That's real humility. You have to look towards the things that you feel isn't helping you And if you're suffering, then you have to look to these things, because you can't just blame the world or other people. It's you. You are the vine. You are creating the existence, right? And I'm going to get in more into that in this podcast of how you perceive the world because of the suffering that you've been going through. And you will be so new in character that you will look back on your suffering as a blessing that brought you forth towards the rebirth. That's what's going to happen, Jordan. Think about that. Reframing the past as a necessary part of your transformation. I can't tell you how many books I've read about people's lives that were so terrible you can't even possibly imagine. One book that comes to my mind is Yeonmi Park's book, In Order to Live. An amazing book. She is an incredible human being. The stuff that she went through in North Korea, the suffering, the starvation, the poverty, it is unbelievable. The trauma that she endured. And now, when you listen to her speak, she talks about her past with such gratitude. Well, why? Because it made her into this strong, independent warrior person that she is today. And she's helping people as a consequence. People are looking to her as inspiration because of what she went through. That's what's going to happen to you, Jordan. Once you overcome this, I want you to help somebody. I want you to share your story. I want you to make a video. I want you to make a podcast. I want you to share, because you're going to realize that this suffering is a teacher for you. You're going to be a different person on the other side of this. The 1% differences every day is going to transform you into a different person. For me, without the suffering, my life would not be as extraordinary as it is. I wouldn't have created this podcast. I wouldn't have been a coach. I wouldn't have, not just that, the quality of my life is completely different. I get up in the morning and I feel good. I'm more present. I feel healthier. My relationships are flourishing. I'm bearing great fruit on the vine. I'm cutting off the branches that are just unnecessary. I'm minimalizing my vine, and I'm really ripening the fruits that I decide to pay attention to and to hold on to. You become the solver of problems rather than the slave to those problems. In John 13:16, truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. The slave is no greater than his master. Think about that for a second here. The lie is co-created between the slave and the master. It becomes the normal. You know nothing but the lie. And you decide to sell your soul to hold on to that lie. To then admit to the lie is to encounter humility. Your own faults, that you've sinned. Sin means to miss the mark, by the way. That's crazy. Think about that for a while, to miss the mark. You have to admit that you're wrong. And so, Jordan, what I can say to you is, as you progress in your recovery, whatever that means to you, whatever you decide to take on, whatever you decide to let go of the certainty. Faith is the letting go of that, trusting in a higher power. You have to let go. You have to admit all of your faults and mistakes that you've messed up, and that um, have look towards the future as something that's that's full of potential. That's what really helped me get over my foggy and uh, rocky past, is to look towards the future and say, man, if I could be someone else, that that was a drive for me. I could be someone else. I can speak differently. I can act differently. The quality of my life doesn't have to be this way. And surround yourself with those people. And I don't mean just physically, but I mean online, books, podcasts. You will absorb that energy. You will. So, Jordan, thank you for the great question. I love that question, man. The next question comes from Sholay. She says, what are the benefits of taking on a ketogenic diet? What has it done for you? Well, Sholay, I'm not speaking as a dietitian, but someone who's a practitioner, who's someone who's done ketogenic diets and someone who's observed the effects it has, and someone who's very interested in the studies now being conducted on people who are low carb, who do carnivore diets. And for me personally, Sholay, I feel fantastic. I feel like this was the icing on the cake for me when it came to my anxiety. I started to eat vegetables and steaks, vegetables and fish, salmon, and a little bit of nuts, very little berries, if any, at first. I was just eating mostly vegetables and salads and, chicken, fish, and red meat. And I noticed in 1 week a drastic change in my mental health. I remember specifically sitting at a Starbucks, and I was sitting there thinking, wow, my mind is so clear. My mind is so clear. It's not foggy anymore. What is going on here? There's something to this. There's something to this. I've had clients who struggle to commit to a diet. And I've had a client before he said to me that he was on a ketogenic diet. He felt fantastic, but then he got worried about, the concerns the society is placing on him, like cholesterol and is it healthy to eat butter and eggs and this and that. And so he went off the diet, and then he went to other diets, and he told me he just never felt as good as being on a ketogenic diet. And to all those concerns I just mentioned, because yeah, society put them all on me. It took me at least 2 years to really get over that hump of fear of, like, because I suffered from health anxiety. So you know where I'm coming from. I was very concerned. Oh, is it gonna clog my arteries if I eat too much butter and eggs and cheese and this and that? So I did a lot of research. So I'm recommending, Sholay, I recommend this diet, but not only that, I recommend that you do your own research. And I'll tell you who to turn to for great information, because these people that I'm about to mention, they talk about the studies, right? So when you hear something on the news saying, "Oh, red meat causes this and that," I want you to look into those studies, because believe it or not, you're going to find out that Kellogg's, Big Pharma is funding these studies. Surprise, surprise. No wonder the study is against real whole foods. The studies want you to turn to Kellogg's oatmeal or rice bars, whatever nonsense is out there, Beyond Burgers. It's nonsense. I'm telling you right now, it's nonsense. But there are some great books that you can dive into yourself if you're looking for a great diet that's really going to change your life. And even YouTube it. YouTube people that go on ketogenic diets, YouTube people that go on carnivore diets. I want you to turn to those people, because that's the real truth. The truth is, well, you doing it for yourself and seeing how you feel, but also looking towards other people that are doing it as well, and looking towards professionals. I know a lot of heart surgeons. I don't actually, not a lot, but I know a couple who are on keto and promote keto, and they do heart surgery, and they themselves are extremely healthy. They look fantastic. They talk about all of this stuff. They talk about why cholesterol was deemed, like, cholesterol rich foods was deemed unhealthy, butter, saturated fats. Now it's obvious that it's healthy for us, but if you're not awake enough, then you'll follow the trend of toxic, lies, essentially. So people I recommend, Dr. Ken Berry, an amazing channel. He has everything. Like, his videos range from different metabolic disorders, health concerns, to 1-2-3 guide to keto, 1-2-3 guide to carnivore, how to get started, what to eat, what to avoid. And I recommend, if you start this diet off, keep your carbohydrates under 100 grams a day, and then introduce lots of fatty meats, fish, eggs. You can introduce vegetables, see how you feel, some fruit, some nuts, but remember to keep the carbohydrates down at 100 grams. At least the max is 100 grams. No more than that a day. And then what I did over my journey is I kept reducing the carbohydrate intake. And, well, it turns out the more I did that, the better I felt. So Dr. Ken Berry, I recommend Dr. Paul Saladino. I recommend Dr. Sean Baker. I recommend this amazing book. This book talks about all of the studies and why these lies propagated themselves and flourished within culture, like cholesterol and, saturated fats being unhealthy. Check out this book by Nina Teicholz called The Big Fat Surprise. It'll open your eyes. There's another great book by Dr. Ken Berry called Lies My Doctor Told Me. A lot of people want to just trust their doctor. I know so many people that trust their doctor, and I think it's foolish. I think you should question them because they're not nutritionists. Let's get that straight. They don't study nutrition. Okay? And I think that's a great place to leave that question. Thank you, Chalet. Great question. So I recommend that diet. I've been on keto for about 6 years. I've been on the carnivore diet for at least 2 years, and it's just been amazing. It's just been amazing. It's changed my life, my mental health. I feel emotionally stable. Maggie, my wife, she notices how stable I am compared to how I was before the diet. I was just all over the place. I was hitting walls throughout the day, feeling tired. Now I'm just awake all the time. I'm stable. I'm not fluctuating in emotion. It's just, I can't recommend this enough. Dean has a great question. This is really good. He says, or asks, I became so invested and reactive to intrusive negative thoughts. How have you dealt with them? Any advice would greatly help. Dean, fantastic. Something that was so prominent in my life. I was so sensitive to that. I would get a negative thought, an image, a movie would play out in my mind, and I would become so sensitive and reactive to that, and I would freak out, and it would just it would increase my anxiety even more. It was a daily thing for me. It was a phenomenon in my life. And so the first question is, where is that voice coming from? That's a great question, right? Like, what is that voice? It's freaking the heck out of me. And it's the shadow side of the psyche. There's a great moment in the Harry Potter series where Harry comes to Sirius Black. It's in the 5th book, I believe. And Harry says to Sirius, I'm having nightmares. I'm waking up in the middle of the night because in the dreams that I'm having, I am Voldemort. I'm acting as Voldemort and I'm doing terrible things. Am I a terrible person? And then Sirius gives this great answer. He's like, it's not the thoughts that make you a bad person, but it's what you decide to do with them. It's your actions. It's your actions. And I always thought about that. And it's so true. Because we're going to get these thoughts. And then later I learned in the courses that I was taking, like NLP and CBT, I noticed that thoughts are this investigation. The thought is just an investigation into the terrible unknown. That's the thing. It's an investigation into the terrible unknown. And when that thought plays out in your mind's eye, you're confronting the terrible reality that could happen. It's a potential. It's a potential. That's why it manifests in the mind. So a great example of this is you're holding a baby and you think of throwing the baby. Or I'll give you a better one. Now that I have a baby of my own, I'm outside holding the baby and there's a swimming pool right next to me. And I think, oh no, there's a swimming pool right there. And then my thought turns into, what if I jump into the swimming pool? What if I throw this baby in the swimming pool and the baby drowns? And then I have this thought and it plays out and I feel this horrible emotion come up and I feel terrible. It's a very negative emotion. It's horrifying to me. It is horrifying. And then I think, am I a bad person for thinking this? And then here's the trick, okay? Ask yourself this. When you play out this horrible thought, ask yourself, do I really want this? This question will unravel the truth of the matter. The voice that will come up will say no. And when I ask myself, do I want this to happen? The voice would come up and say, no, of course not. That would be horrible. And so then I'm like, why did I even have this thought in the first place? And I'm bringing it back to the thing I said before. The thought is just an investigation into the terrible unknown. My mind would recognize that there's a pool and then go, oh no, that's dangerous. Watch out. Which is good because I don't want to walk into the pool. And then the mind will host other terrible possibilities associated with the danger. So in my case, I could, jump into the pool with the baby. I could throw the baby in the pool. All of these other possibilities could happen. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It means my mind is investigating the unknown, what's possible out in the unknown. I believe the mind likes to tackle the uncertainty from all angles. But it's really important to bring it back to this awareness by asking yourself the question, do I really want this? Of course not. So I'm not a bad person. The fact that you're aware of these thoughts make you aware of your shadow. It makes you aware, just like Harry Potter makes him aware that he could be a bad person if he decides to walk down this path, but he chooses not to. He chooses not to act that out. People that do terrible things, they do it impulsively without thinking. They do it, they don't think. There's no thinking involved. The fact that you're thinking, the fact that you're aware means that you're aware. You're awakened to the fact that you have these thoughts. Now, it's what you do with them. It's what you do with them. I've had thoughts back years ago when I was suffering from my anxiety. I would go out for these walks with my folks. And I would have these crazy thoughts about my folks dying, losing them. They would be terrible, and it would increase my anxiety, increase my dependency on them. Like, oh my God, if I don't have them, what am I going to do in my life? What am I going to do in my life? And at this time, I was uncertain and afraid over my own health. So that fallibility extended out towards other people that I cared about. So my insecurities and my sins became the filter to how I saw the world. Right? It was my shadow telling me something. I am unhealthy. The world is uncertain. Oh my God, my parents could die. Oh my God, this person could die. Oh my God, I could die. Oh my God. That's the Siddhartha conundrum, right? Buddha story. How do you deal with the uncertainty of life? How do you transcend that suffering? And my fears grew out of the truth, out of seeds, right? Seeds. What were the seeds? Well, the origins of this is I haven't mastered the unknown. I haven't mastered myself. I am not taking care of myself. The branches of my vine are sprouting everywhere. I'm not tending to the garden. You and your conscience have to grow together by journeying forth into the world to uncover deeper fundamental truths, mainly the moral path, by stumbling off of it and stepping back on. That's the thing. You're going to have this adventure. You have to go on this adventure with your conscience, because you and your conscience are underdeveloped. Until you go out into the world, you encounter malevolence, you encounter embarrassment, you encounter vulnerabilities, you encounter everything that everything in the world that tests you is going to be humbling, but it's also going to make you develop. It's going to strengthen this inner dialogue between you and your conscience. And when you're walking down this path in your life, you're going to realize, because you've encountered so many things and you've developed in so many ways, by the next situation you walk into how to respond, because you've already responded in a certain way before, or you haven't responded in a certain way before, and now you will try a different way of responding, and that will help you grow yourself in character. Because if you're bad at socializing, what do? You go and socialize. You learn how to talk to someone. You look into their eyes. You have to become comfortable at doing that over a long period of time. You have to learn how to shake someone's hand properly. You have to learn how to introduce yourself clearly and precisely. And that takes time. And that takes repetition as well. So if you don't go on any adventure, how are you going to manifest any sort of change? Really, you're not going to develop. It's terrifying, because the older that you get, the more pressure it has on you. And this brings me back to Jordan's question, right? Like now that I'm getting older, how do I move forward with my recovery? And the answer is, well, you have. How terrible will it be to actually be 80 and not go on any adventure? I mean, the story of Abraham was what, 70 before he went on his adventure? He was 70, but it's never too late, because at least you can have those years of freedom, and that's worth everything. It doesn't matter how old you are. Now is the time to change. And it'll be the best thing for you. And when you walk down this path in life, because you're on this journey, you're going to encounter what works and what doesn't work. You're going to unravel fundamental truths, and they're going to smack you in the face, because you see that in the great book, Crime and Punishment. Raskolnikov, he is bitter and resentful, and he thinks that killing his landlady or this pawnbroker will be a great thing for the community, for everyone. He really thinks this is a great moral act, but he does it. He kills her and then realizes this was a horrible mistake. He suffers unbelievably so from that. It's like the Cain and Abel story. Cain kills his ideal, thinking that that's the best thing. But he does, and then he suffers greatly for it. He learns a great lesson. And these stories are there to help us not go so far into that direction. But these stories are there to help us, guide us towards something, that these are truths, right? Be careful what you entertain in your mind. You need to go out on these adventures. You need to develop. You need to see what works and what doesn't work. What happens when you lie? What happens when you tell the truth? What happens when you steal? Don't go out and steal just to see what happens, right? But you know what I mean. You have to develop a sense of good and evil, not just within people around you, but within your own heart. Within your own heart. Because you're going to lie and you're going to be like, oh my God, I don't feel good. Your conscience will tell you. You're going to do something and you're going to regret it. You're going to feel shame, guilt. Recognize that. Recognize that. Someone's going to bend the fabric of reality on you. Someone's going to betray you. And then you have to establish good and evil within them. How could someone do that to you? You have to understand where that person is coming from. You have to understand the shadow, that they are human. The line between good and evil runs down the center of every human heart ever on this planet. And so for me, I know in my life that I have to tread down this line carefully. I have to sacrifice a lot in my life so that I can maintain some mental sanity. I have to exercise. I have to maintain a strict diet. I have to maintain some sort of sleep pattern. I know that's non-existent now because of my baby being here, but that's just the way it is. It's a great challenge, and you know what I mean. That's just a joke, but I am working day in and day out just to maintain some sort of, just to feel sane in a world of uncertainty, and to buttress myself. Because if I add my own uncertainty into my life, then, well, I can deal with the randomness that could be thrown my way on a day-to-day basis. So I have to prepare myself for that, mentally and physically. And that's a great place to stop. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the whole podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. And also, on Spotify, just quickly leave a rating. I would greatly appreciate it. That's all I ask. It'll help spread this podcast outward into the world. And lastly, rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. My anxiety recovery program is available over at unpluganxiety.com. With the Know Your Brain audiobook, you will learn about the inner workings of your anxiety system. This will help you to better understand why you feel detached and out of control from this ancient brain structure. That's at unpluganxiety.com. Go there to learn more.